For decades, South Korea has been the miracle of Asia, a war-torn nation that transformed itself into the world's 10th largest economy, home to Samsung, the K-pop revolution, and a standard of living that rivals the West. But this economic powerhouse, which once seemed unstoppable, is starting to collapse from within. The country's fertility rate has dropped to 0.72, the lowest in human history. Samsung just lost the crown for memory chips to its domestic rival after 30 years of dominance. And over 420,000 young Koreans have simply stopped working, stopped looking for jobs, stopped trying. They call themselves the just resting generation. In December 2024, the president attempted to declare martial law. By April 2025, he was removed from office. The military has shrunk by 20% and is now short 50,000 troops needed for minimum defense. And the housing system that made Korea's middle class wealthy is collapsing, trapping millions in a deposit fraud crisis worth $1.4 billion. South Korea isn't just slowing down, it's unraveling. And what makes this moment so critical is that unlike other crises, there's no clear way out. So how did one of the world's greatest success stories find itself here? And is there any way to stop the fall? On the surface, South Korea looks stable. GDP per capita sits around $33,000. Unemployment is officially under 3%. The country is peaceful, democratic, and technologically advanced. But underneath, the foundations are cracking in ways that statistics don't capture. The first pillar to fall was corporate dominance. For 30 years, Samsung Electronics was untouchable in memory chips. But in 2025, it lost the race for high bandwidth memory, the critical chips needed for AI. SK Hynix captured 62% of the HBM market, while Samsung fell to just 17%. Samsung failed to pass NVIDIA's qualification tests on time, missing the biggest tech boom of the decade. This wasn't just a business loss. It was a national shock. Samsung alone accounts for nearly 20% of Korea's exports. When Samsung stumbles, the entire economy feels it. And it's not just hardware. Naver, Korea's Google, has watched its search market share drop from 75% to 55% as ChatGPT and American platforms take over. For a nation that built its wealth on being the fast follower in technology, suddenly it's being left behind. But the tech decline is only half the story. The real crisis is in housing. Korea has a unique rental system called Jeonse, where tenants pay a massive lump sum deposit, sometimes $200,000 to $500,000, instead of monthly rent. Landlords invest this money, and when the tenant leaves, they return the full amount. For decades, this system worked because property values kept rising. But in 2025, as prices stagnated, landlords couldn't return the deposits. Nearly $1.4 billion in deposits are now trapped, unreturned. Families have lost their life savings overnight. This has frozen the entire housing ladder. Young people, terrified of Jeonse fraud, are switching to monthly rent, which costs far more and destroys their ability to save. Marriage rates are plummeting. Birth rates, already the lowest on Earth, continue to fall, and household debt keeps climbing to record highs as people borrow just to survive. At the same time, over 421,000 young Koreans, many of them university graduates, report they are just resting. They're not unemployed in the traditional sense. They've simply opted out. Why? Because the game feels rigged. Jobs at chaebols like Samsung require brutal competition. Small companies pay 56% less. So an entire generation has looked at the system and said, no thanks. Normally, when a country faces economic trouble, the government steps in with massive spending to restart growth. Build roads, fund projects, put cash in people's hands. But South Korea's political system is paralyzed. Following President Yoon's impeachment in April 2025, the new Lee Jae-myung administration inherited a deeply divided nation. Public trust in government is at historic lows. The opposition controls the National Assembly. Economic reforms are stalled, and the country is too polarized to agree on a path forward. And then there's the military crisis. South Korea's 20-year-old male population dropped to just 230,000 in 2025, down 30% since 2019. The armed forces are short 50,000 troops needed for basic defense readiness. With North Korea still a nuclear threat, the country is being forced to consolidate divisions and rely on automation and AI systems that aren't ready yet. So what happens next? The Lee administration is attempting a soft landing, focusing on stabilizing the housing market to prevent a banking crisis. The government has launched a sovereign AI initiative with NVIDIA, hoping to rebuild Korea's tech edge. But with Samsung's export engine sputtering, the demographic cliff shrinking the workforce, and the Jeonse crisis threatening financial contagion, the country is running out of time. If the government can't bail out the deposit insurance fund by early 2026, a liquidity crisis in the banking sector is probable. If birth rates don't stabilize, the Bank of Korea warns of 0% potential growth by the 2040s. And if the military can't solve its manpower shortage, national security becomes a question mark. South Korea's crisis isn't like a recession that can be fixed with stimulus. It's structural. The model that worked, fast follower manufacturing, export-driven growth, and a stable middle class built on rising property values, has stopped working, and the country is now forced to reinvent itself at the worst possible time, with a divided government, an aging population, and global competitors moving faster than ever. The world is watching to see if Korea can pull off another miracle, but this time the odds are stacked against them.